Hi, this is Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International, and you're listening to Unknown Origins Radio.
We live in a world filled with the unknown. Ghosts and spirits wander through our physical dimension. Undiscovered creatures lurk in the shadows, and strange lights and craft seem to dominate our skies. Modern science refuses to acknowledge their existence, yet credible eyewitnesses are convinced these things are real, and it's up to independent researchers to search for the truth. Welcome to Unknown Origins Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Unknown Origins Radio, where we talk about everything having to do with the strange and paranormal. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, and I'm joined by, we have another full crowd tonight. We have our co-host, Carrie Ann Versace. How you doing, Carrie Ann?
Would you almost forget my name?
I was going.
Good, Mark. How are you?
I was going. Wait! I got two. Who am I introducing?
I know it's so rare to have us all together lately.
I know.
I'm doing well.
We need to do something about that. And of course, before we get gabbing too much here, Lauren DePinto. Hey, Lauren.
Hello. I was hoping that you'd say my name with a mouthful of Skittles, but
A mouthful of Skittles.
There you go.
What flavor is that?
That's good. Thank you.
Well,
we've got some boomers. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, wow, I hear that. That is loud.
Hear it?
Well,
So it just got
My
to you.
my whole house is shaking.
it passed through my neighborhood about a half an hour ago. It was really bad, but now it's gone. So it should probably be passing you pretty soon.
Yeah, not too bad. At least, and nothing's getting too saturated out there. It's a couple of dribbles, and that's good because, my grass is dead. I mean, I'm going to get the whole team in to come and spray it green because there's just no salvaging that. Did you ever hear of that, guys? That you can actually hire somebody to come in and spray your grass?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, for $200, I guess, depending upon the size of your backyard. And, it's not growing anyway, so if it looks green and you're having a party,
All right,
that's great,
so-
Well,
Does it come off on clothes and your knees? Like,
Yeah.
if it gets wet?
No, but you'll there'll be a slow death at the end of the month because of all the chemicals and poisoning that you'll be enduring. But it looks good.
cat starts growing a fifth leg, And,
Yeah,
well, I hope you both enjoyed the weather we had over the weekend. Oh my God, was that incredible!
It was perfect.
Absolutely pitch perfect. Could not have been better. And then now it's Monday, so we're back into the sticky hot soup again. Oh, good Lord!
Well, it's better that when we're working in an air-conditioned environment anyway, It's much better for it to be crappy on a Monday than it out there beautiful like it was this weekend and us being looking out the window going, oh.
True.
Exactly.
Oh God! And we had so much happen over the weekend. It's just incredible. I mean, a lot of sad stories, and I won't beat this to death. But of course, there was the tragedy in Friday night. Was it Friday night?
Colorado.
Thursday
night, midnight showing in Aurora, Colorado, where the lone nut decides to shoot up the theater and kill 12 people, and wounded. I heard 58. And one of those 58 is a friend of one of our friends of the show, Stan and Lisa Romanek. One of their friends' 16-year-old daughter was shot and was on a breathing tube over the weekend. And last I heard, she was doing good enough that they pulled the breathing tube. So again, our thoughts and prayers go to all the victims of that tragedy. And
that was terrible.
Yeah, there's just something not right about the whole thing. I mean, it's just it's bugging me.
You know what? It's bugging me too. Don't you feel that it might be? I don't know. Sometimes when something like this happens, don't you think like conspiracy theory? Did that pop into your head at all?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I sent something to you, Mark. Did you see that guy who actually predicted this back in October? He's like some kind of idiot savant when it comes to code. Like, he doesn't see words the way we see words, and he put Morgan Freeman's character. You add up his name, and it comes to 666, and you add up. Did you read that, Mark?
Yeah, I read it. A lot of it.
A little.
Go ahead.
It was a little bizarre. It was a little bizarre, but the whole fact that he said something ominous was going to happen at the premiere was just weird, or opening the weekend anyway. And that was actually, I think, September of last year he said that. So, oh, that's weird.
Wow. Yeah, but how did this guy afford all of that? I mean, that arsenal that he had? I mean, that's amazing. Do you know how much they estimate that how much it was? About 20 grand worth of arsenal that he kind of accumulated over the past couple of months.
You know,
but that's only if he bought that at a store, right? Because this morning on the news they were showing people selling it out of the parking lots of the mall. This one guy. Yeah. Did you see that this morning? This one guy was selling an armor-piercing one, the one that could shoot planes and helicopters out of the sky. He sold it for $2,000 with no question asked, and it was Dateline, and they were like, "Well, did you think to even ask us why we were buying it?" And he's like, "No, I don't care." It's like, so yeah, it's not good.
Unbelievable. Yeah, they said about 2 months before the Friday shooting that he received about 50 packages in 4 months at his home and at school. So he was a student at school then, right? He
was a PhD studying neurophysiology. You know, what makes the
like
body.
Sheldon.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. This guy, I've read where people were study partners of him in college, worked with him. They can't believe this guy. He was quiet, but he never gave any indication of being nuts. And then what does he do?
Always the quiet ones. Always
the quiet
But what makes a PhD like this, somebody snap, go paramilitary, rig his whole house with booby traps to the point where it took him almost 2 days to disarm everything to get in the house. But then what does he do? He shoots up the place and then sits outside and waits for the SWAT. And when they show up, yeah, it was me. I did it. Here, take me in. Oh, yeah, by the way, my house is booby trapped. Be careful. Nothing about this makes sense to me.
There was another thing that I saw that this was actually close to a reenactment from a very original Batman comic from like the 40s. And a gunman went into he was mad at Batman. He went into a porn theater, and it was pornographic on the screen. Well, it was a porn theater, and it was like nuns simulating nuns or whatever. And this guy just took out a gun and he started shooting everyone. And then he left Batman's logo like it was Batman's fault. So that was a big thing I was seeing too. It was like, so maybe he was some kind of super geek. I don't know. Who knows? You know what I'm trying to say? Like really into the comic and wanted to make. Who knows what goes on in the minds of these people? I don't know.
Wow.
What?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Good. Well, another weird fact is that he didn't kill himself. A lot of these people, will do their job and slay all the people, kill them, and then kill themselves. But he didn't. He willingly just walked in. He walked ahead and just said, "All right, I'm clad all in." He had all his armor on, his vests and this and that, and he's just said, "No, I'm giving in." But he didn't kill himself. So they're hoping to get some information out of him, and what is in the mind of a killer like that.
And in court today, he was all drugged. He looked all drugged out, a zombie, incoherent. It's just, you know what? I hate that.
Why would they medicate him?
They didn't say they medicated him. Maybe they did, and they're not telling the press. But he was medicated.
He was in jail, right? He's been in jail since, so it had to be done to him. I can't imagine that he was allowed to have any drugs with him, so that's weird too.
But all the press is reporting about how drugged out he was without any of the police coming up and saying, "Oh yeah, we had to do this for safety reasons." That's not come out. So they're drugging him out. Either they're drugging him and they're not telling anybody, or there's just something really seriously wrong with this guy. That I don't know. I hate to look at it this way, and I have to agree with Lauren. This popped into my head, and I don't see conspiracies everywhere I turn around. But if you really take a good look at this, who has the most to gain from a tragedy like this? And you can look right at the politicians, right at the people who are currently in the limelight, giving condolences to the families, mugging for FaceTime on TV, and right in an election year, only a few months from the election. It makes me suspicious. And then there's also this UN gun treaty that they're threatening to, pass and try to make America a part of it, which would greatly affect the Second Amendment here. And yet you have a tragedy like this. What's the first gut reaction? People rush to say, "Oh, we gotta make more restrictions. We gotta keep these guns away from people." And it just, there goes another right of ours stripped away from us out of fear and wanting the government to protect us. So,
right.
Again, I'm not trying to sound like a big conspiracy nut, but I'm just suspicious and I don't trust it, what's happening. And I'm going to be watching the proceedings, what happens to this guy in the future. Not saying he was a government plant or anything. Maybe he was just a lone nut, but how often do we hear about the lone nuts? It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
And no bath salts involved, right?
Yeah. At least he wasn't eating somebody's face off.
Face off, right? Oh, that's in poor taste. Forgive me.
Oh, good God. Well, there was another piece of news that came out, and, I'll actually say we were aware of this when we did our show a couple of weeks ago, when we had Katrina Widman on, and, we respectfully did not touch on it because she wasn't comfortable speaking about it, and we respected that. But it's come out in the press now about Ryan Buell, the head of Paranormal State, is suffering from pancreatic cancer, and we wish Ryan nothing but the best. We hope he gets a full, speedy recovery, and we ask everyone to send out, any healing thoughts and prayers that you can his way, because he's way too young to be having to deal with something like this. And let's face it, pancreatic cancer is not a good one. It's one of the worst you can get. So, Ryan, we wish you the best, and we hope that you do recover here quickly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How sad. Though there's been a lot of prayers going around Facebook about him, though, so that's good. So hopefully all the prayers will pull together and there's some positive energy and light going his way.
Yeah, after Saturday when he was rushed to the hospital with kidney failure, there was a lot of prayers going out, and he was released. So maybe there is something in the power of prayer.
Well, they did come out later and clarified that he did not have kidney failure. He was having an issue with his kidneys that they were able to treat with medication when he was there, and they're saying it had nothing to do with the cancer itself. So, but they assured everyone that he was doing fine. Ryan is no longer doing updates personally on Facebook. He stepped back to concentrate on his healing. So other members of the Paranormal Research Society are the ones who are posting on his Facebook page and giving us updates to let us know how he's doing. So, again, I had the pleasure of actually working with Ryan, as we mentioned during Katrina's show on Paranormal State. Ryan seemed like a great guy, and it was a lot of fun working with him. So, again, Ryan, we wish you the best. Hope you get better soon, man. So, anyway, this has just been 2012, I swear to God, with everything that has been going on. You just have to wonder, how much more is this particular year have in store for us?
Oh, let's not invite anything, please.
Invite? No.
Like when people walk around going, I'm having such a bad day. What's next?
Yeah, I'm going to start.
No, don't invite it.
I'm going to start wearing a necklace of garlic cloves, to just keep the evil away. Well, keep everybody else away while we're at it. But
attractive.
So, have you guys been watching Chasing UFOs on National Geographic?
I watched a couple of episodes.
I tuned in the other day with Stan Romanek.
Yeah, I have to admit, the show is growing on me. I'm really enjoying it. It's certainly not rocket science, but the dynamic with the team members, I like all three of the team members. And, some of the cases they've gone on, I have to admit, it's less schlocky than I thought it was going to be. And it's fairly interesting. The Roswell episode they did was very interesting because they found somebody who knew where the actual crash site was, and they went out and they were using metal detectors to try to find any fragments of anything in the ground. And they found 2 fragments in the ground that showed it wasn't anything that was strange, alien metal, although they met a gentleman out there who had collected it and showed them what he had. But he had it in a box, and they, of course, weren't able to analyze it, so who knows what it was. Could have been a beer can for all we know. But they found a piece of tin and an army button that came off of an army uniform that they were able to actually trace back, and it was used during a 2-year period right around 1947. And which means that the military was out there in the middle of the desert, and somebody wearing a uniform had to have their button pop off, which could have been they said the theories was they were like on the ground with guys on the ground walking forward and picking through every little piece of dirt to try to find what they could.
Hey, Mark, I wanted to jump in here. You know, I was watching that episode you're talking about.
Yes.
And, you know, that button is it's not like a fatigue button. That button was like off of a formal jacket coat.
Yes.
Like a formal coat. That wasn't like like Army fatigue button.
Yes.
So,
it was an officer's or like you said, it was more of a formal uniform.
Right. And I thought that was interesting.
Very interesting. So, they're doing some interesting episodes, although I did hear a story from last week that a couple of the cast members, the two guys on the show, there's James Fox, who's the UFOologist, and then there's Ben McGee, who's the scientist. And they both, I guess, came out, and this sounds actually very reminiscent to what happened to Finding Bigfoot, where the cast kind of came out complaining about the production company, how the show was pitched to them, how it actually came together, and how much of the real science portion of it is on the editing room floor. And they're a little disappointed with that.
You all right, Mark?
Huh?
Did we lose him?
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Hello.
Race, do you hear me?
Yeah,
I hear you, Mark.
Everybody's here.
Everyone's here? Okay. So, yeah, it's they're not happy with how it was been edited and dumbed down. It had a better title that sounded more scientific, something like, investigating unexplained phenomenon or something like that. And then they changed it to Chasing UFOs. And again, it seemed to model a lot of the Finding Bigfoot show. And then, they're saying that next year they really want more control because they want to focus on the science. And I actually applaud these guys. They've taken a critical drubbing over the quality of the show from a lot of people out there. In fact, people we know and we've talked to. But with, they actually have acknowledged that, and they mentioned what they would really like to do with the show. So I'm hoping that they're able to make some positive changes, because I know they did that with the Finding Bigfoot crew. They made some complaints, and then the next season came out, and the show actually got better. Well, anyway, we're going to come up on a break here. So let's go ahead and we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with our guest for tonight. And we've got a really, really great topic, really good subject to talk about tonight. So don't miss out on that. So stay tuned. You're listening to Unknown Origins Radio here on the Global Radio Alliance.
Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more.
And welcome back to Unknown Origins Radio. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, along with Carrie Ann Versace and Lauren DePinto. And our guest tonight has 33 years of instrument engineering experience, and he's created some of the more popular and effective paranormal research equipment in use today. His products include the Mel Meter and the Real-Time EVP Recorder, both of which have become wildly popular with paranormal researchers and have been featured on several paranormal TV shows. As a matter of fact, between myself and Carrie Ann, I think we have most of these items. But it's his personal story that is so intriguing, which was also featured on a recent episode of Ghost Adventures. So please welcome Gary Galka to the program. How are you tonight, Gary?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on tonight. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on. Actually, I was very excited when I was able to get in touch with you and you agreed to come on because, we're not going to spend too much time on the equipment tonight because I think you have a much more important story to tell us. But we'll start off a little bit with the equipment for people who may not be familiar with you. You've created some devices, And like I said, we use them ourselves. I have my version of the Mel Meter. It's one of the simpler versions. I know you have several versions of it out. But that device alone is really revolutionized what we've been doing in terms of using equipment to measure certain electromagnetic fields and temperature variations while doing paranormal research. And in the past, we would use the separate EMF meters. You know, some people would have the great tri-field meter, which is almost a little too powerful and sensitive in some cases, and other times we'd be using these cell sensors or even the K2, which, you know, I have mixed feelings about. And temperature readings, you either had a regular thermometer or you had the point and shoot, which were worthless because it would only pick up the temperature across the room. So the Mel Meter is great because you get the ambient temperature and the EMF all on a nice, easy-to-read digital display screen. What made you, what gave you the idea of putting these devices together and forming this device?
You know, I've been asked this question a million times, but the truth of the matter is, Mark, you know, in the early days after Melissa transitioned to Spirit, what happened was I was so inspired by her interaction with us, and I really didn't have a good feel for the paranormal at all. I didn't know what EVPs were. I didn't know what after-death communication was. I had to look all those things up because I had no idea. After she passed, I started watching TV shows, and what I really wanted to do was, by that time, I had accumulated a numerous amount of interactions with my daughter through these after-death communications, and I was inspired to pursue, you know, this product idea after watching. It was actually Ghost Hunters at the time, and I saw them using all these different things. And I said, "Gee, how about?" In my mind, I'm thinking, "How about if we just take these items, all these multiple items, and combine them into something that's really convenient, so that you don't have to have all these things on you, and make it more of a scientific tool than something that just gives you a blinking light or something." So that was really the thrust of my concept, and where it was born out of that inspiration through my daughter. But it wasn't designed for the purpose of sales. In many cases, it was designed to help paranormal enthusiasts pursue a passion that they love, and it also was done in order to help me in other ways, and those other ways consisted of helping other bereaved parents. Because one of the things that I did after Melissa passed, and after I started to heal through all of her after-death communications, was my wife and I created these wonderful groups for paranormal, for bereaved parents, where they would come in and we would help them. We'd bring in psychologists and grief support people and all this stuff to try to help other parents. And we just wanted them to feel what we felt. We wanted them to sense the healing properties of what we had, and we wanted to show people that there was something to look forward to, that you can live through the grief, and that's really how the Mel Meter was born.
Well, I personally need to thank you, because I was one of those people that were juggling 4 or 5 gadgets that now that you have all in one. And yeah, I had no place to put anything, so it was wonderful. And one of my all-time favorites right now is the Real-Time. I absolutely love that, because if you make that connection, say you get the name, you can talk immediately to whomever.
Yes, and the thing about the Mel Meter is, we started with a basic unit, and some of the things that you mentioned, Mark, like the tri-field meter, which measures geomagnetic fields and stuff. Well, we have models that incorporate all those same principles into the Mel Meter. We have a magnetometer. We can measure geomagnetic fields. I can tell the difference from a north pole or a south pole shift. There are a lot of little things I can do, and it's all programmable, so a person can press a button to make it as sensitive as they want, and you have sound, and you have basically all the properties that you need to make an intelligent diagnosis of a situation or a circumstance based on what your investigative style is. So for me, we have all those things there, and of course we have 13 Mel Meters now, and all 13 of those are developed over the past 2.5 years.
And one has a shadow detector too, doesn't it?
Yeah, just thanks for bringing that up, because the SDD, the shadow detector, was really kind of cool. I was talking to a paranormal investigator, and all of a sudden it popped into my head. I said, I just had this idea. I think I could create a device that detects shadows in the dark. And I was so excited when Zak used it in the Shanghai tunnels. And not only did it detect an anomaly that was zigzagging through the field, but you heard the audible tone, the lights were going off, and then it was validated with a camera, which is always wonderful. And Britt and the Ghost Hunter team has started to use it this year, and they've captured some of the best evidence ever with that. So I'm really pleased with the performance of the product. The performance really matters to me. I don't make stuff that just to sell it. I make stuff that really has an impact, or I try to make an impact. If it doesn't have an impact, the product is going to disappear.
Sounds like I know what my next purchase is.
Gary, you mentioned your daughter Melissa, and I think while the equipment, we could go on that for a while. I really want to go to what I think is the real important part of your story, and I think I'd rather let you tell it. So that you already mentioned to people about your daughter passing. Could you briefly give for those people who listening may not fully understand or know of your story, what happened and what inspired you to do this?
Okay. Well, first, Mark, I have to set the record straight because there have been some, as you know, there have been some relatively nasty things printed in blogs and things about me knowing that my daughter was drunk, and that's what caused the accident. When in fact, Melissa had no drugs in her system. She had no alcohol in her system. I have to let people know that. I know what caused the accident. There is another little part of the puzzle that I didn't think was necessary for me even to mention, because it involved another party that was driving in front of her at the time. So what I really don't want to get into is that part of it. And yet some people miss the whole concept of the show, which was to help bereaved parents understand that our children aren't lost forever, that you're going to see them again someday. And really, some people take all negative aspects of things, they try to make something bad out of it, and really they miss the whole point. And I'm a little disillusioned by that. There was one person in particular out of all the hundreds of thousands of people that viewed the movie and on YouTube and everything else that is distorting and twisting the truth, and it's just really discouraging. But Melissa has inspired us in many ways. She has been communicating with us for the past 8 years, and I just decided to come forward with it because I've reached a plateau in my life. My wife has reached a plateau in our lives where we're willing to share this because it's an important stepping stone for all of us to understand that there's something well beyond the scope of our understanding, and that vision of what's beyond our physical eyesight is making itself known to me. And I'm trying to share that with people to give them that same insight so that perhaps, just perhaps, that insight can help them heal maybe from the loss of a loved one or a loss of a child. Since that show, Mark, we've had hundreds, maybe 200-300 emails and texts and letters, handwritten letters of how much the show has helped them to heal after losing a child or a loved one. So my wife and I weighed all that out before we did the show, and we decided that even if we touched and helped a few people, it was well worth the risk. And the risk was putting my ass on the line, okay, for so many people to see a part of me that they've never seen before. But again, knowing what I've been through and where I am today, there's really not much that somebody could do to me to hurt me at this point in my life. So there you go.
Well, and as I will say to our listeners as well, we fully support you, and you're not making a dime off of this when it comes to helping these families. And, that's something I would really like to hear you talk more about.
Sure.
But, there are a lot of haters out there, and I just don't understand the haters. We have friends doing their television shows right now, and the hate and vitriol that comes out from some of these people online is just unbelievable. What's the old joke? Haters gotta hate. Don't get that myself, but you know what? It's the rest of us who know the truth that we just need to get it out there. And the haters are the ones that scream the loudest, but usually the people who scream the loudest are the ones who are the most wrong. So
I was always raised to respect other people's opinion, okay, and I expect the same thing of my opinion. And I think also that from this story, there's a really important message, and the people that got it, okay, I feel really good about, because it really does. The more people I help, the better I heal. And the other part about it is I'm more of a trusting person. I always give somebody the benefit of the doubt first and then let them prove themselves wrong. And if they do, then I back off. But for the most part, the people that I've come across, the people I meet, you have to understand, I come from a totally different environment. I come from an industrial, commercial business environment. I'm dealing with engineers and plant environments and doing various things out in the field and stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm dealing with people, individuals. Each person has their own personality. Each person has their own temperament. Each person has their own views. And, I tend to listen to all of those, and I don't criticize. I take it for what it is. I keep my mouth shut, and I just go on with my life. But I think that for the most part, we're all trying to achieve something. And in my case, I'm really targeting other parents who have been through similar tragedies to my own.
I wanted to add to that. I remember, oh God, it's been a long time since I bought my first Mel, and I remember going on the website and researching the product and reading the story, and it truly broke my heart. It was a beautiful thing that you did in trying to do this, and that particular Ghost Adventures that I saw, well, I was in tears. It really was one of the most heartwarming ones. It personalized everyone in that. It really was a wonderful episode, and it's a sad thing that you went through, but you are helping a lot of families. When you do these groups, do you actually use your equipment and show the people to try to contact, or is it basically just a bereavement group?
No, well, Carrie Ann, that's a perfect segue into what I'm doing right now. And I have to tell you also that everything that you saw on the show was 100% legitimate. And it was validated by more than one person. And also, what you saw was just a small percentage of all of the responses that we had with my daughter. So there was probably a total of 50 or 60 responses from Melissa throughout, from the interview to the time of her birthday. She was with us from Sunday to Tuesday. Wow. And some of the outtakes are actually posted on my YouTube site. If anybody wants to go to it, it's GJGDAS. So it's my initials, GJG, and then the company DAS. And you can actually listen to many of the outtakes that didn't make the show. Zak felt that they had to be of a certain tone and a certain quality in order for it to come through the television in a good way. So that's where it is. But one of the things that we're doing now, since the show, I have spoken to Melissa, and you have to understand also that she's not earthbound. She's actually in the hereafter. But Melissa has this incredible ability, and the incredible ability is she can come back and forth. But she only comes back and forth now to help me connect with other children. Now, this is the best part of all. My daughter has agreed, and she acknowledges to me that she can connect me with other children in the hereafter in an effort to connect them with their parents. Now, since the show, I have had 13 sessions with families, some of them face-to-face, and the longest session lasted 4 hours with over 60 responses from their son. We just did a session after the recent rerun, I think it was a couple of Fridays ago. I got a call from a family in Maine, and the woman had 4 sons. One of the sons passed away. She found him in the kitchen, and she was just torn up. It was only 3 months ago. She contacted me on Saturday. I tried contacting her son on Sunday. I did contact him on Sunday, but the connection was so weak that even though I could hear him, she would not be able to hear him. So I told Melissa, I said, the connection wasn't good. Let's do it again Monday. Monday, she brought him into my house. And when she brought him into my house, the connection, the amplification, all the quality aspects of that connection were enhanced probably tenfold. So that part of it worked out really well. The mother and the 3 sons all heard the responses from her son, and the healing properties from that communication to the mom and the brothers. It's priceless. You cannot put a price tag on that, and that's why I do all this stuff as a volunteer. You just cannot, you can't charge people to do that kind of stuff. It's immoral to do that. So, for me, it's just I try to do it when I can. I work a normal 40 or 50 hours a week at my job, and then I do this in my spare time. So that's my love right now, and that's just connecting people and with their children in the hereafter. And Melissa has helped me so much with that.
Now, I just wanted to touch on... Oh, I'm sorry, Lauren, did you have a question?
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment that you really are bridging the gap, and it's amazing to see. I mean, you could see that this is your path, this is your journey, and it's beautiful. It really is. And I have to say that I did watch the episode again today with my kids, and my daughter wanted me to tell you that she was so moved to tears watching it. So it truly affected all of us on different levels. Mm-hmm. It's an absolutely amazing show. It really did. So thank you.
Well, and G is like 9.
Telling your story.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I said G is like, what, 9? How old is G, her daughter?
No, G will be 13, and my son is 9, and they were both affected by it, and just so moved and so interested, too, in learning more about this. Mm-hmm. So, you really are touching many different people on, and again, thank you.
No, it's really important that you tell me these things. It makes me feel good in my heart, and basically I know that by hearing those types of things, I know that I'm on the right path. So one of the other important things that I have to say to everyone is I do use my RT EVP to communicate, and what's really cool about what's happened here is I can record bidirectional communication, and I typically get responses every 5 to 10 seconds. So when I have a 30-minute session, I connected with a son for a mom that came to my house a few weeks back. We were getting responses every 5-6 seconds from the son, and it was just immeasurable. And even you could hear Melissa talking to the son, like she would say, "Talk to them," and he would go, "Okay," and then we would get responses because he was a little bit shy. And is everybody still there?
Yes, we're here.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. And then, but one of the other things about it is you talk about changing it, and it's kind of like a transitional thing for me. What's happening is I'm starting to hear the responses in my head, and they're being validated and documented on the recorder. So a lot of times I did a session for a mom. She passed away, and the kids needed closure. So I connected with the mom, and I heard the mom say thank you to me. For what I was doing to help her children. And I said, "Your mom just said thank you." But no, there were 5 people in the room. Nobody heard that. But then when I listened to my recording, I could hear her say thank you. And then a second later, you hear me say, "Your mom just said thank you." And it's really awesome because it comes into my head as a buzzing sound, like just a buzzing. But then my brain translates that buzzing into a word. So something is definitely changing. And all this has taken place in the past 8-9 weeks.
Wow, so
I do have I'm sorry, Sharon.
No,
let me just ask this question. Oh, sorry. this happens sometimes with there's so many people on the line. But,
Lauren, you ask your question. You ask your question, then we'll go to Carrie Ann. Go.
Okay. No, watching the show today, that did pop into my head, and I wondered, are you sensitive in a medium/psychic way at all? Have you ever been?
No, I've never been. And one of the cool things about this is that, for the past 8 years, I've been asking Melissa to help open up that part of my brain so that I could hear her, because I've been using technology. I've been using my SB7, the spirit box I created. I've been using the RT EVP. I don't use the Mel Meter for communication. The Mel Meter it's really a scientific piece of equipment just to make intelligent choices and decisions in the field. But people use it. They see the EMF going up and stuff, and it gives them some indication that some dynamic variable is changing within the environment, and it might be part of a paranormal experience. We don't really know. But the thing that's happening to me now is the voices have started to happen more frequently. They're coming in. It's validated with the recorders. So, my abilities are just beginning to blossom here. I never had that. I've been asking for it, and I've been asking for it a lot for the past 8 years, and now it's finally starting to happen. And when I talk to Melissa, and I'm during a session with somebody, and I'll tell the people, because they'll ask me that question, "Gary, have you always been able to hear that?" And I'm like, "No." And Melissa will tell you that she's, that I've been asking for that. And then you hear Melissa say, "He has." So it's kind of cool because there's a lot going on here that I don't understand. I welcome it with open arms because it shows me something, a part of me and a part of life that most of us will never understand or know about. So I'll take it all. I'll take anything that I get, and I'll use it, to the best of my ability to help other people, and that's it.
Carrie Ann, did you have a question?
No, Lauren and I think a lot alike, so basically it was that.
Great minds.
Yeah.
I just think that probably, dealing so closely with the hereafter, it's definitely going to have an effect. If you're having that close of a communication, I think that it's what, the third eye opening, right, Mark?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the more you work with it, you naturally, your own, everybody has this to a certain extent. Some people, it's barely working, like, me, or other people are very, very in tune to it. And the more you work with it, it's like a muscle. You work it out more and more, you start becoming a little bit more sensitive. You become a little bit more in tune. So, yeah, the more you're working with this, Gary, I'm sure that you're going to start picking up some things or being a little bit more intuitive with these types of situations.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. It's my own personal growth, and that's something that is important to me. I like to see change. And hey, Mark, you mentioned something earlier. I gave you access to those files with my last session with a lady in Maine, and you had a hard time hearing those. But maybe you could share those with Carrie Ann, or maybe share those with Lauren, and let them see if they can hear them, because the mom and the sons could hear them very clearly. And it's important to me because the mom said that those can be shared with people. And, a lot of the stuff that I do is kept confidential with the families. They would want it that way. And but this mom said that if it helps with any healing properties for anybody, if they can be shared, to do so. And eventually I'll post my sessions on YouTube with the hopes that other people will stumble across them and hear them and take them for what, the value that they are.
Oh, we're going to pester him. Don't worry.
Okay, please.
I will send them out to them today.
Drop me a note when you listen to them, because they're so beautiful to listen to. You have to listen to them.
Okay. Well, Gary, the one thing with Melissa, I don't have children, so I cannot even begin to understand what you went through 8 years ago when she passed. And the closest I can come is there was somebody that I knew. She was 19 years old, and this beautiful girl. She worked at a local restaurant here, and her whole life is before. And right at Christmas time, she got into a fatal car accident and was gone. And talk about stunning. Being stunned and shocked, because here's somebody you don't expect somebody young like that to pass. So, and it being a family member, having been one of your own children, when after that happened, when did you first start to experiment with the audio recordings, or how did you come across contacting Melissa? When did that first happen for you?
Well, the communication from Melissa started the day we got back from the hospital. So, that was through an after-death communication. People refer to it as an ADC. But, it's a common thing, but many of us overlook them. And because it was so clear, and in this case, it was just her scent, and it was so clear that and very distinguishable that I just, welcomed that. And my younger daughter, Heather, and I both experienced it at the same time as we were walking from the car into the house through the garage. So, and then from there, it just evolved, with the doorbell ringing, and then the television turning on, the stereo changing channels, the TV changing channels, and all kinds of things happening. And at that point in time, my only concern was, is my daughter okay? And so I started investigating on the internet, everything, and, just about what happens to us when we die. I mean, those are the things that I wanted to learn about, but I knew nothing about. So, my mom passed away 6 months before my daughter did. So for me, I was kind of multitasking the grief. I was just getting to a stable point with my mom. You know, one minute my mom is there and we're visiting my mom at the funeral home, and I'm holding on to Melissa so that she could say goodbye to her grandma. And then 6 months later, my daughter, Melissa, is gone. So, you know, we went through a lot in a very short period of time. And from that point in time, you know, all these things happened. I went through a number of life changes. I started doing crazy things. You know, as a young kid, I used to race motorcycles, and I always wanted to race motocross. So at the age of 49, I hired a national pro, and for a year I trained until when I was 50 years old, I got into a racing circuit and I started racing motocross. So for me, I felt a little bit like I was invincible. I felt very alive. I felt like nothing could happen to me. And even if it did happen to me, what's the worst that could happen? I'd be with my daughter. So there was a little bit of a reckless time where I was confused. I raced motorcycles for 3 years. I won 5 trophies, which was really kind of cool because I was racing against 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, and I was 50 at the time. So I did that. I jumped out of a plane. I did, you know, all the things that I felt I wanted to do, but I didn't think I would ever do them. Almost like a little bucket list for me, and that was really important. And so after about I don't know. After a while, I started to evolve, and that's when I started getting this really sincere interest in the paranormal and helping other people. And that's when I started getting into these shows and watching the shows. So really, it was a TV show that triggered the impulse for me to start developing product.
Wow.
Kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah.
It is.
But it makes...
I think I would have done the same thing. You do get that feeling like, you know, I can go to the ends of the earth and I don't really care at this point, you know. And again, you would see your daughter. I totally get it. I totally get it, especially as a mom.
You have to still do it with a certain level of respect and responsibility. I mean, I broke my ribs twice. I fractured my wrist. But at the end, I was jumping through the air, a 70-foot jump, 70 feet through the air on a motorcycle. And you know what? That's something that I never thought I could do, but I didn't really have the fear. The fear was gone. And I don't know if I should credit Mel with that, but you know, the fear was gone. So even when I broke my ribs and stuff, you know, they healed and I started racing again. So it was, for me, it was a strange period of my life. And, you know, I'm in pretty good shape for my age, and I like to do things that most younger people like to do anyway. So, I mean, this past weekend I was tubing, and the whole objective there was them whipping me off on the sides of the boat, and the boat's going 50 miles an hour trying to get me off of a tube. So I did that for a half hour, but, you know, I'm doing that with 20-year-olds, and, you know, so, but it's just part of life, and enjoying the things that put a smile on your face.
But the other side of this is what makes me nervous. And there are people that do this after they lose a loved one, and they almost forget the living counterparts. You still have your wife and your other child, and sometimes at least you snapped out of that, and sometimes people do not, and it just spirals out of control. It's like they're too busy thinking about what's lost, or they have someone right in front of them too.
Carrie Ann, the worst thing that happens when you lose a child is, you know, I've been married over 30 years, and the worst thing that happens after you lose a child is 50% of those people get divorced. I can't tell you. I got a call from a family a few towns over, and the husband and wife were both crying on the phone while I was talking to them. They lost their daughter 4 years ago. And it was causing them to get a divorce. And I communicated with their daughter, and the words that saved their marriage was, "I am safe." That was the message from their daughter. The daughter's name was Alyssa. Beautiful girl, 3 kids in a car, another car coming the opposite way, doing 100 miles an hour across the double yellow line and head on into these 3 kids, and they all died. So it was just those words, "I am safe," in her voice, in her pitch, her tone. And the father called me up. He says, "Gary, you just changed the whole landscape of my marriage and my family. Thank you." So That's
beautiful.
That is it. Okay, that's really, that right there was worth everything that I did, everything that I've done. Because I can't begin to tell you, my wife and I actually grew closer together because each of us became a crutch for the other. And so when I was feeling depressed or she was feeling depressed, I would cling to her and she would shake me out of it. You have to understand too, we got through this. I took no medication. I had no depression issues. I was able to take care of myself. Granted, I did spend almost 10 days in bed afterwards, but anybody would do that. And I think the 4 days that she was in the hospital, I lost 9 pounds in 4 days because we didn't eat anything and we were sleeping 10 feet from the intensive care unit. So it really does take a toll on you. No parent, anyone who has never lost a child, please, you have to really be sensitive to what a bereaved parent goes through. It is the worst, the most painful experience. I'd rather have all of my limbs cut off than lose a child. It's just the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world.
Well, Gary, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back after the first of the hour. We're going to continue our talk, and we'll take some questions from the chat room. So everybody, don't go away. We'll be right back with Unknown Origins Radio here on the Global Radio Alliance. And we're back with Unknown Origins Radio, where we talk about everything having to do with the strange and paranormal. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, with Lauren DePinto and Carrie Ann Versace. And our guest tonight has been Gary Galka, inventor of such devices such as the Mel Meter and the Real-Time EVP Recorder, and also talking about his experiences with his deceased daughter, helping him to bring comfort to other grieving families. Now, I want to throw it out there tonight. Anybody in the chat room, if you have any questions for Gary, please type it in the chat room in all caps. But we're also going to open up the phone line. So if anybody would like to call in and ask Gary questions about his work with the grieving families or even about his paranormal equipment, you can give us a call toll free at 855-GRA-LIVE. That's 855-472-4583. Again, that is a toll-free number. So please feel free to call in. And now we had some other questions. Carrie Ann, you had a question you said you wanted to ask him.
Oh, yeah. Well, being the gadget equipment tech freak, I really want to know what you're working on, what new and latest discoveries you've come up with.
Okay. Well, I'll be happy to share some things with you on that front. And actually, one of the things that I've been working on for the past several months is a way in which we can determine if there are any EVPs being detected. Now, the RT EVP has proven to be very effective for a lot of people, as you know. However, there has to be another way that we can find out if for example, if something's been recorded onto a recorder, or let's say that there's a disembodied voice and maybe your ears aren't sensitive enough to pick it up. So what I've done is I've created a new device, and for lack of a better word for it, I'm calling it an EVP pod. But when it goes into the Mel Meter, it's going to have multiple different types of functionality to it. But the EVP pod is basically a visual. There'll be LED lights, and each light that goes on indicates a strength level of the EVP, let's say. So a weak EVP may illuminate the first light. A strong EVP may illuminate, the fifth light, or anywhere in between. And you can also have sound with it. And what I do is I do a sample and hold where I can actually make an alarm come on, but before I make the alarm come on, I actually turn off microphone so I don't get feedback. So there's a little bit of software going on there, a little bit of programming in order to do all that. But what's really cool is that there's a microphone, there's lights, and there's sound, and it'll be in a pod. And that'll give you an opportunity to set it down. And if Spirit wants to interact with you in a new way, they can use the microphone and make the different colored lights come on, and they can also make a sound. So if you're doing an EVP session with your recorder, it would be very interesting to be able to correlate, say, a reaction of the pod and then say, I think I may have captured an EVP. And then you'll know when to listen for it. So I wanted to...
That is totally, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that is totally something I've always wanted. I was hoping that you're sitting there sometimes and you're not using the real time. You want to know when you get an EVP. You don't want to have to sit through an hour worth of stuff. So like if a little alarm went off, that would be really cool. I'm loving this one. And
well, you know, Carrie Ann, you also know that I don't know if you have the new or the new RT-EVP, but there's a numerical counter on the newest, the version 2 software, which has a counter, and you can actually adjust the sensitivity of the microphone so that you can ask a question and then be totally silent, and then look at the digital display. There's 0, 0, 0, 0, and you can look at that, and if it flips from a 0 to a 1, you know that you captured an EVP. But in many respects, a lot of the paranormal people out there that use my gear, sometimes my equipment gets over-engineered and they don't use it properly. And in this case, there's so many features in the RT EVP that I seldom see a lot of these very powerful, useful tools being used. So that's kind of discouraging. But there is a counter in the latest, I want to say it's a 2011 model, that we came out with. So there's a numerical counter in that device that can also do that. And with the backlit display, you should be able to see if spirit reacts. And it also counts and it also locates where that EVP is on the file so that you can simply scroll directly to that little tag mark, the date and the time stamp, and it'll play the EVP for you. A lot of people don't even know that exists because they don't go through it properly. But I think that this little pod is going to be useful. I'm trying to create tools that are simple, a little bit more practical, something that is not expensive, but something that, you know, serves a certain purpose. Now, that same module, if you will fit into the Mel Meter, and it'll do the same thing in the Mel Meter, but the Mel Meter will have an audio output. And the audio output will function like a parabolic microphone. So you can put an earbud into your ear, and there's a push button. Every time you press the button, it increases the amplification of the sound around you. At the most sensitive level, it's so sensitive that it can actually detect somebody moving their lips from 4 or 5 feet away.
Wow. You know, you say, here's the thing. I'm one of the first people to buy one of pieces of equipment, and then you always make it more sophisticated, and I'm like, oh, I should have waited. But I get so excited, you know, to get it. But I think the problem is people don't take the time to learn this equipment. There is, like, yes, you know, I'm lucky. I'm friends with Brian Cannell. We work together on Scaring, so I get to see some of the equipment that he got to use on Haunted Collector. And those Mels are off the chart. What you guys are coming out with, you know, it takes a lot of time and patience to learn how to use the equipment properly. And I think too many people just rush right out there like, oh, I got a new piece of equipment. They don't take the time to learn it, and it falls. So, yeah, I guess you have to have this layman's pieces of equipment and then still keep your really sophisticated stuff, because when it's used properly, it's off the chart.
Yeah, I agree. It's just really a matter of practice, and take some time. You know, it's like buying an iPhone and learning all these apps that you can download. I mean, you're going to have to do the same thing with some of the equipment. But the problem there is when I develop a really complicated product, it takes a long time and it's very expensive to do it. But the market served, i.e. the paranormal market, it really doesn't pay for the development of some of the more complicated pieces of equipment. So from my point of view, I'll probably back down from getting myself in too deep on some of these more sophisticated pieces and try to focus on the bread and butter items that will serve a really good purpose, but also be a lot of fun to use. Because, you know, if you're not having fun doing what you do, and a lot of people do this almost like a hobby, you know, you have to have fun, and you have to be able to use it in the dark, and you have to be able to see results. I think when you combine all those things together, it makes for a really good time out with, you know, with your friends and your team and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we have a couple of questions coming in from the chat room, so let me ask the first one. Miki Ria asked, why do so many people not believe in an afterlife? I can't talk tonight. Why do so many people not believe in an afterlife, Yet these same people believe it is impossible to destroy energy, only transform it. Well, the human body obviously has energy. What do you think about that?
Well, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I think that a lot of the people who have that particular opinion and belief, they've never really had a reason to believe it. My dad is in that category, unfortunately. My dad is 86 years old. Next Monday he goes in for they're replacing the valve in his heart, and I look at that and I say to him, and I try to educate him and inform him and share things with him, but a lot of people have to feel it, they have to sense it, they have to hear it, they have to see it with their own eyes before it truly becomes an awareness to them. So in order to get somebody from where they are to becoming a believer, that's something that they have to want. That's something that they have to want inside of them. Okay, and it's available to everybody, but it's up to those people to really want to go after it. People like us. I've had enough. I would bet my life on it. And if somebody wanted to challenge my recordings in a lab or anything else, I put $100,000 on the line. That's all authentic. But I think that when people go out there and they go to these haunted locations, they're expecting something to slap them in the face, and that's just not the way it is. You have to open your senses up. You have to really almost put yourself into a different state of mind. And I think that if people would just take the time just to start, investigating what's available to them, I think it would change their whole perspective on life. I really do.
Wow. We have another question. This one's really interesting. Comes from Teresa, who also happens to be one of our show hosts here on Global Radio Alliance on Tuesday nights, Spirit Talk with Teresa. She was asking, what happens when you have multiple spirits talking all at once?
Oh, that happens too, Teresa. One of the downfalls, and I'm glad she brought that up, one of the downfalls with communicating with the other side like I do, when Melissa opens up a portal and comes through, it also opens up the door to other entities. I've learned that, I never believed it, but it actually does happen. And, when I do my sessions in the house, I had a police officer from Saugus, Massachusetts come to my house, and his wife come to my house. I never met them before, but we developed a rapport by email. He lost his son in a motorcycle crash, and I was going to put him and his wife in touch with their son. And they came to the house, and we had a cookout. They were with us, with our family, for about 6 or 7 hours. And at the end, we had a beautiful session, had wonderful communication with his son. He was right there. One of the cool things was that Melissa turns on the REM pod when it's time to talk. And if I ask her to activate it, she'll turn it on, and I'll say, "Did you just turn that on?" And you could hear her in the recording say, "We did." So the fact that she's able to activate a device for me and prove that she can do that illustrates to me that the product has merit and is really a proven product. But one of the things that happens is I will say, just in the beginning, I'll say, if there are any spirits within the sound of my voice, please refrain from interrupting this beautiful connection between the family and their child. And I say thank you. And here's the response I got from an elderly gentleman that happens to be in my house right now. All right, he goes, "I don't care about it. I don't care about it." And then he said, "Thanks for nothing." So it was, when we listened to that, he goes, "I don't care about it. I don't care about it." And then he goes, "Thanks for nothing." And so I have since heard from that gentleman a couple of times now. And I talked to Melissa about it. He said and Melissa told me that he's an older gentleman. And I said to her, I said, I don't like anybody in my house that's not family or a loved one. But then I started thinking about it. I said, maybe this guy is lonely. Maybe he doesn't have family. I said, Mel, if he's a nice gentleman and he doesn't seem to be bothering me at all, I said, let's show a little compassion and let's just leave the guy alone. So yes, there are other entities. When I deal with somebody, the person identifies themselves. They will say, "I am here." And Melissa is a moderator while this happens. I can actually hear her telling somebody to get out. All right, I will hear, while I'm talking to this other spirit that I'm supposed to be talking to, I will hear Melissa, when I listen to the audio, she'll say, "Get out." Get out, soldier, what are you doing here? I actually heard her say, soldier, what are you doing here? Get out. Okay, I mean, I could actually hear that taking place in the background. And it's very similar to what happened on Ghost Adventures. What you didn't hear was there was a whistling sound. You heard a whistling, but there was whistling before that. And the whistling, the first thing Melissa says, don't do that. And they continued. And after she said, don't do that to the person, she said, get out. And then after that, she says, they're gone. And the part that you heard on TV was they're gone. But there was a whole bunch of stuff going on that you guys never heard. So it's really awesome. I mean, I actually take my recorder and I sit in my car because my car has double glass windows. And I go in my garage, I sit in my car, and when you look at the audio file, it's a pencil line. That's how quiet it is. You hear a pin drop. So all of my recordings are typically done in the car. And when I'm in there, sometimes I'll put the recorder down and I'll tell Mel I'll be right back. I'll go out and I have a water garden in the backyard. I'll feed the fish or whatever, and I'll come back. In that time period, I will catch full conversations with spirits talking among themselves. One spirit says, Melissa, we have to get going. It's an elderly man. It was really odd. And then another man or boy says, we have to go now. And then Melissa says to the girl that I'm supposed to connect with, are you ready to talk? I mean, it's so cool because I'm catching all this with the RT-EVP. And then when I listen to the file, I'm like, wow, I'm actually picking up dialogue and conversations, and I'm not even there asking questions. So for me, it's kind of a cool thing. I kind of enjoy it. I'm not scared about any of this because I feel that Melissa has the ability of coming in with not only people I help, but family members in sweeping my house if it gets out of control. And I've had her do that a couple of times.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that. I was leading into us. No, I can't talk. You got me all choked up. Are you ever worried that something bad could come through and Melissa can't fight it off, or I mean, that's a tough situation.
The soldier one bothered me because when I heard her say get out, he said never, and when I heard her say get out again, he said never again. So that kind of disturbed me, and I talked to her about it. And about a week later, when I asked her if that was resolved, she said he's gone. So for me, I know that she has that ability to take care of it. And these are earthbound souls, or these are people that are in between where we are and where they are. Melissa's already told me that she resides in another dimension within our own world. It's not in the sky. It's right here. So, she has physically told me when I asked her, I said, is it like the earth? And she says it's much better. So all these things combined, I'm creating all these pictures, but I don't hammer her so much on all these little things that everybody's aching to know because I'm just accepting it for what it is. And while I'm curious, I always think I respect what's happening here. And to me, it's like Aladdin with the lamp. I don't know if my wishes are going to stop. And I always tell that to Mel. I said, I don't know when this is going to stop, but I'm really enjoying it. I'll keep doing it as long as you support me. So for me, it's like a little miracle happening and unfolding before my eyes, but it could disappear tomorrow. So you have to accept it for what it is.
Yeah, when you actually answered a question I was going to ask you, because I bet a lot of people do ask you, does she tell you what the afterlife is like? And I was going to ask you that, but I was also going to say, you don't have to share that with us. I was just curious if those conversations took place.
Well, those conversations have taken place, and there are a lot of things that I know, but I really don't feel that it's necessary for me to really share them with people, because I think a lot of people have a vision what heaven is like. Now, one of the things, Mark, that I shared with you tonight is if you listen to one of those EVPs, every single child that I've spoken to has told me that they're happy, okay, or they're okay, or in this case, there's an EVP there, and I say, are you happy, Matt, are you happy in the afterlife? Are you happy in heaven? And he says, I'm happy in heaven. So if you listen to that, you're going to see, and he says, I'm okay, all these beautiful things. Listen to where he says, I love you, mommy. I mean, these are incredible things happening. And, I feel that this is a very special time in my life. And my biggest fear is, will it go away? I don't know.
When you were mentioning the soldier in your house and possibly dealing with other spirits coming and going, Teresa in the chat room also asked the question: do you do any protection rituals before opening up?
I do not. The only thing I say is a prayer. I say a general purpose prayer for myself, and sometimes when I say my prayers, somebody says you're welcome to me. And I don't know who that is. It could be my spirit guide. I asked Melissa who my spirit guide was, and she said his name was Michael. So, these are all things that I'm learning, and these are all things I've learned in the past 2 months. So for me, the amount of information coming to me is overwhelming, but, I love it, and it's really well received. As far as evil entities and stuff like that, the only time I've ever encountered an evil entity was at Fort William Henry up near Lake George, and I was using a prototype RT EVP. I had 4 prototypes built. They were $4,000 a piece. Zak got one. I used one. In fact, I was there with Dustin Perry that night, and I had the RT on a bench in the dungeon, and I said to the spirit, I captured over 100 EVPs that night. I said to them, you must be getting bored with us. I haven't heard you speak in the past 20 minutes. And I felt something come down from the ceiling. I can't explain it. And my earbuds were yanked out of my ears. And then the RT that was sitting in the middle of the table crashed onto the concrete. So for me, that's probably as bad as it's ever gotten. So I can't say that I truly enjoy going out and hunting ghosts per se, like Brian on Hunter Collector. He enjoys going out and hunting ghosts. I don't find any enjoyment in that personally. That's not who I am. I know they exist. The ones that you come in contact with, in many cases, they aren't that pleasant. And personally, I'd rather encounter somebody with a personality that's pleasant and willing to talk to me on a civil level than just telling me to get out or, get the F out. Okay. In some cases I've heard. So for me, that's just not, it's not where I want to be.
We have a few minutes left. And the one question that it's really come to mind with all the communication you've had with Melissa and these other entities and helping people, but have you ever seen Melissa? Have you seen her apparition since she's passed, or had any kind of visual, either in a dream state or in physical?
Yeah, I have. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting in the kitchen having lunch. It was just after maybe 12:30 in the afternoon. My wife was at the sink washing a couple of dishes. My daughter was on the kitchen island, where you guys have a pretty good idea what my kitchen looks like from the show. And I was sitting at the table where my son-in-law, Mike, was sitting in that same place. And I looked up while I was eating, and there in front of me was a mass, a ball of energy. And it was undulating. It was just changing shape and spinning and rotating. And I looked at that, and my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It was the oddest thing. I'm looking at it. It's only 4 feet in front of me, and yet I could not make out what it was. I mean, my brain was like, okay, is this like is something burning in the house? Is it dander from my chocolate lab? I don't know what it was, And then all of a sudden, it started moving horizontally about 2 or 3 feet. It continued to undulate. Nobody else saw it, and then it just faded and disappeared. My encounters with Melissa have been at that level only. My younger daughter, Heather, has seen her 2 or 3 times. And my son-in-law, Mike, who also lost his older brother, saw Melissa, but in a solid form. So that was kind of cool. He was scared. He did not tell us about that until much after the experience. He was a military police officer in the Navy, stationed in Groton, Connecticut, and he was well trained in a lot of things to observe and everything else. When he saw Melissa, he was completely confused by that, and then he got shook up to the point where he came downstairs and he was actually shaking. So, and he couldn't talk about it. But I think that was meant to help him understand and help him to deal with the loss of his older brother. because he didn't have any belief structure in place up until that point. Now he does.
Wow. Well, this has been an incredible journey that you and your whole family have been on. And not only, I have to say, at least in my opinion, you're blessed to be able to have this communication with your daughter, even though she's no longer here in the physical, but being able to help these other families that has been dealing with similar situations with the loss of their children. What's next for you? Where do you feel that you want to go from here?
Well, I'm going to let this ride reach its final destination, wherever that might be. If I develop that ability to hear things a little bit better, that's really important for me, because that's really what I've always wanted and what I've always asked for. And, for those of you who don't know what it means, and I didn't even realize this, but I read a book not too long ago, a few months back, called The Secret. And everything in that book is kind of like what I practiced over the 8 years, but it didn't dawn on me that the power of suggestion, or wanting something and asking for it, you can actually get what you ask for. And in some respect, the things I've asked for have come true. So I encourage anybody who hasn't read this book, The Secret, to please read it. It's really an invaluable tool for anyone who wants to open their mind and their eyes to things that I've actually had a chance to experience, and things that have changed my life. So for me, again, I'm just going to take this ride, Mark, and see where it takes me. I would like to slowly, I know a lot of you aren't going to like this, but I would like to slowly back away from where I am. The products and things that I build, you have to understand something. I was retired, almost 8 years ago, and I came back into this to pursue this other field and help a lot of people enjoy these different gadgets I'm creating. But the truth be told, I'll probably start to slow down in that area and back away from it. And as my new skills develop, I'm just going to focus 100% on helping people until I can't do it anymore.
Well, I have to say, that is a great thing that you're going to do, but I'm going to be very sad at the same time.
Oh, it's not going to happen tomorrow. Don't worry, Carrie Ann. I'll still be around, and don't worry about that. And I still have some great ideas that I'll put to practice and come out with before that happens. So don't worry.
Okay.
Well, I hope you put out a book. Any plans on writing a book?
I keep telling Mel that I would love to take all of these audio clips that I have. I have thousands of hours of EVPs and communication. I would like to share those with a lot of people and let people know and hear. Because parents who lose their children, the first thing you do is you gravitate to books, George Anderson, or any author who writes about connecting with our loved ones. And, I would love to be able to do that, but I would like to be able to do it and have the chapters be from the perspective of the people that I helped, so that they can all be part of it. And then all the proceeds from the book would go to bereavement groups.
Fantastic. Well, Gary,
so I'll be buying it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Gary, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Your message and your experiences are powerful. It really is. It's gut wrenching, but in a good way. It brings hope to a lot of people, and I just want to personally thank you for coming on tonight and sharing your story with us.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here, Carrie Ann and Mark and Lauren and Race. I appreciate you having me on the show tonight.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well,
okay.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to yet another edition of Unknown Origins Radio. You can tune in every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the Global Radio Alliance. And we sign off with our motivational quote of the week. When I look at today's society, it makes me think what Abraham Lincoln would be doing if he were alive today. And the answer is simple: clawing at the inside of his coffin. Have a great night, everybody.
Last year he said that, so that's weird.
Wow. Yeah, but how did this guy afford all of that? I mean, that arsenal that he had? I mean, that's amazing. Do you know how much they estimate that how much it was? About 20 grand worth of arsenal that he kind of accumulated over the past couple of months.
You know,
but that's only if he bought that at a store, right? Because this morning on the news they were showing people selling it out of the parking lots of the mall. This one guy. Yeah. Did you see that this morning? This one guy was selling an armor-piercing one, the one that could shoot planes and helicopters out of the sky. He sold it for $2,000 with no question asked, and it was Dateline, and they were like, "Well, did you think to even ask us why we were buying it?" And he's like, "No, I don't care." It's like, it's not good.
Unbelievable. Yeah, they said about 2 months before the Friday shooting that he received about 50 packages in 4 months at his home and at school. So he was a student at school then, right? He
was a PhD studying neurophysiology. You know, what makes the body...
Sheldon.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. This guy, I've read where people were study partners of him in college, worked with him. They can't believe this guy. He was quiet, but, he never gave any indication of being nuts. And then what does he do?
Always the quiet ones. Always the quiet
But what makes a PhD like this, somebody snap, go paramilitary, rig his whole house with booby traps to the point where it took him almost 2 days to disarm everything to get in the
it just got
my whole house is shaking.
It passed through my neighborhood about a half an hour ago. It was really bad, but now it's gone. So it should probably be passing you pretty soon.
Yeah, not too bad. At least, and nothing's getting too saturated out there. It's a couple of dribbles, and that's good because, my grass is dead. I mean, I'm going to get the whole team in to come and spray it green because there's just no salvaging that. Did you ever hear of that, guys? That you can actually hire somebody to come in and spray your grass?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, for $200, I guess, depending upon the size of your backyard. And, it's not growing anyway, so if it looks green and you're having a party, that's great,
Well,
Does it come off on clothes and your knees, if it gets wet?
No, but you'll there'll be a slow death at the end of the month because of all the chemicals and poisoning that you'll be enduring. But it looks good.
Cat starts growing a fifth leg, and Well, I hope you both enjoyed the weather we had over the weekend. Oh my God, was that incredible!
It was perfect.
Absolutely pitch perfect. Could not have been better. And then now it's Monday, so we're back into the, sticky hot soup again. Oh, good Lord.
Well, it's better that when we're working in an air-conditioned environment anyway, It's much better for it to be crappy on a Monday than it out there beautiful like it was this weekend and us looking out the window going, oh.
True.
Exactly.
Oh God! And we had so much happen over the weekend. It's just incredible. I mean, a lot of sad stories, and I won't beat this to death. But of course, there was the tragedy in Friday night. Was it Friday night?
Colorado.
Thursday night, midnight showing in Aurora, Colorado, where the lone nut decides to shoot up the theater and kill 12 people, and wounded. I heard 58. And one of those 58 is a friend of one of our friends of the show, Stan and Lisa Romanek. One of their friends' 16-year-old daughter was shot and was on a breathing tube over the weekend. And last I heard, she was doing good enough that they pulled the breathing tube. So again, our thoughts and prayers go to all the victims of that tragedy. And
that was terrible.
Yeah, there's just something not right about the whole thing. I mean, it's just it's bugging me.
You know what? It's bugging me too. Don't you feel that it might be? I don't know. Sometimes when something like this happens, don't you think like conspiracy theory? Did that pop in your head at all?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I sent something to you, Mark. Did you see that guy who actually predicted this back in October? He's like some kind of idiot savant when it comes to code. Like, he doesn't see words the way we see words, and he put Morgan Freeman's character. You add up his name, and it comes to 666, and you add up. Did you read that, Mark?
Yeah, I read it. A lot of it.
A little.
Go ahead.
It was a little bizarre. It was a little bizarre, but the whole fact that he said something ominous was going to happen at the premiere was just weird, or opening the weekend anyway. and that was actually I think September of last.
Hi, this is Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International, and you're listening to Unknown Origins Radio.
We live in a world filled with the unknown. Ghosts and spirits wander through our physical dimension. Undiscovered creatures lurk in the shadows, and strange lights and craft seem to dominate our skies. Modern science refuses to acknowledge their existence, yet credible eyewitnesses are convinced these things are real, and it's up to independent researchers to search for the truth. Welcome to Unknown Origins Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Unknown Origins Radio, where we talk about everything having to do with the strange and paranormal. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, and I'm joined by, we have another full crowd tonight. We have our co-host, Carrie Ann Versace. How you doing, Carrie Ann?
Would you almost forget my name?
I was going.
Good, Mark. How are you?
I was going. Wait! I got two. Who am I introducing?
I know it's so rare to have us all together lately.
I know.
I'm doing well.
We need to do something about that. And of course, before we get gabbing too much here, Lauren DePinto. Hey, Lauren.
Hello. I was hoping that you'd say my name with a mouthful of Skittles, but
A mouthful of Skittles.
There you go.
What flavor is that?
That's good. Thank you.
Well,
we've got some boomers. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, wow, I hear that. That is loud.
Hear it?
Well, it's house. But then what does he do? He shoots up the place and then sits outside and waits for the SWAT. And when they show up, yeah, it was me. I did it. Here, take me in. Oh, yeah, by the way, my house is booby-trapped. Be careful. Nothing about this makes sense to me.
There was another thing that I saw that this was actually close to a reenactment from a very original Batman comic from like the 40s. And a gunman went into he was mad at Batman. He went into a porn theater and it was pornographic on the screen while it was a porn theater. And it was like nuns simulating nuns or whatever. And this guy just took out a gun and he started shooting everyone. And then he left Batman's logo like it was Batman's fault. So that was a big thing I was seeing too. It was like, so maybe he was some kind of super geek. I don't know. Who knows? You know what I'm trying to say? Like really into the comic and wanted to make, who knows what goes on in the minds of these people. I don't know.
Wow.
You know
what? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Good. Well, another weird fact is that he didn't kill himself. A lot of these people, will do their job and slay all the people, kill them, and then kill themselves. But he didn't. He willingly just walked in. He walked ahead and just said, "All right, I'm clad all in. He had all his armor on, his vests and this and that, and he's just said, no, I'm giving in." But he didn't kill himself. So they're hoping to get some information out of him, and what is in the mind of a killer like that.
And in court today, he was all drugged. He looked all drugged out, a zombie, incoherent.
Creepy.
It's just,